Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's Eric Coffin. I'm here at the November 2019 Metal Investor Forum in Vancouver. I'm here with John Black, the CEO of Regulus Resources, which will be familiar to some of you. Should be if you're not familiar with it. Regulus has a very large project where they are drilling and have already done an interim resource, a very large copper gold resource on their AntaKori project. John is in the midst of a 25,000 meter program, I guess?
25,000 meter
25,000 meter follow-up program. Can you sort of give us a sense of where you are with that program, where that's sort of where it's going? Because,
Okay.
I mean, you had lots of room to grow. You did the resource because you thought it was time to do the resource, but there's lots of directions, and I think it was totally wide open. So where are you sort of taking things, having done that first resource?
Well, when we picked up the project, we had 17,000 meters of historic drilling. And we completed a phase one program that was about 23,000 meters. We were still expanding the project, but we felt it was important that the market saw a properly done 43-101 report that showed an interim resource. So that's the resource we put out in March, which, as you mentioned, is a very sizable resource, a great starting point on it, a deposit in itself for many companies on that. And we're now about halfway through a phase two program. And the phase two program will be designed to expand the project to the north and a little bit to the east. It gets to the extent of the permits that we currently have in hand to drill. And then we're waiting for a second permit to come, which opens up the really interesting targets to the north that we want to test next. When we finish the phase two program, which will be in about Q2 of next year, we'll be in a position to put out another interim resource middle of next year. I doubt we'll be done drilling the deposit out, but we'll make a decision on whether it's important to update the market in terms of how it's growing, and then wait and do probably a third phase of drilling and a third resource to get to the full extent.
Now, I know one of the reasons why you're excited to be sort of moving to the north and the east, I guess, with your drilling is it's an extremely heavily mineralized area, big system. But there's sort of overlapping deposit types, and you're moving into the stuff that you think will be, like, I guess, both shallower and cleaner, I suppose. Is that sort of what you're hoping for?
Particularly cleaner on this, as you know, the system has two distinct styles of mineralization in it. To the south and more onto the ground of our neighbors, it's a high sulfidation epithermal style of copper gold mineralization. Great mineralization, but it is associated with sulfur salts and arsenic on that material. Part of that's the style of mineralization we have on our ground. But as we move to the north, we see a second style of mineralization called skarn mineralization. Also copper gold mineralization, but mineralogically or metallurgically cleaner. It has much less arsenic associated with it. And we believe as we continue to move north, we'll see a higher percentage of that clean material. That's important because you could make a more marketable concentrate. The arsenic-rich material can be processed. It'll just have an additional cost to do that. Right.
Now, and I mean, I don't know if I'd call this I don't know if I'd even call this the main target, given that you've got 500 million tons already, but and your neighbor has probably that much or more so far drilled off, and it's all kind of the same thing. But the one thing that's never really been found at AntaKori, and that unless you guys have a different deposit generating mechanism than everybody else, somewhere under this sucker there's probably a porphyry, and you guys think it's probably on your ground. That's where
geophysically that's what we see, and this is one of the things that got us very interested when we first looked at the opportunity to acquire the project. There was well-known mineralization and it was clearly open. But when we looked at the existing geophysical data sets, what we noticed was there's a very distinct signature in the magnetics, particularly where you get a central magnetic low that has an annular ring of magnetic high material around it. It's a classic signature of a porphyry center that's being emplaced and producing a copper gold skarn or copper skarn around the margins. We've only tested about 25% of that mag high, the skarn target. And some of the most intense mag highs are untested on the ground to the north. Right. And then the central low that is the potential porphyry that drives the whole system is essentially untested as well. So we have a lot of mineralization to start with. We certainly have more than enough to be of interest right now. But if our ideas come through to the north, we will substantially increase the amount of mineralization we have, and it'll be cleaner mineralization.
Well, and I think there are, like, like some of your recent holes, I think there seem to be more porphyry dikes.
Absolutely.
Or, I mean,
Yeah.
so that's
As we-
presumably coming off of a intrusive body someplace.
Well, what we have a northern limit on where we can drill using the existing permits right now, but we can start on the surface and reach out on angle holes as far north as we can.
Right.
And you're absolutely right. They're not ideal holes to test these targets. We're kind of reaching from, and oftentimes by the time we get out to the targets, we're pretty deep into the less favorable stratigraphy underneath.
Right.
But as we drill that way, we see less of the arsenic, which is what we predicted. Mineralogically, we're seeing a zonation from pyrite to chalcopyrite to bornite as we move towards that center, which is geologically predicted. It's good evidence that we're on the right track.
Right.
And we're seeing more dikes that are cutting through. So we're seeing all the kind of the peripheral edges of what looks like we're coming into a porphyry center.
Okay.
And so we're seeing the geologic evidence we want to see. We're getting the encouragement. We're just testing it from afar right now, and we're very anxious to be able to set directly up on it.
And this is, it's a very large system. I mean, Regulus already has a big resource with good grades. And I think one thing you pointed out in your presentation today, I believe AntaKori's got, I think it's 5 of the top 20 drill intercepts, the copper gold intercepts worldwide.
I remember when I used to work for Rio Tinto years ago, we had a little alarm system that if anybody drilled more than 100 meters of more than 1% copper, a flag went up and somebody had to go out and find out what they were onto. It's the type hallmark of a system that is a strong system with good grade. We routinely hit those on this project, and including some very long runs. We'll have runs of 820 meters of 0.77 copper equivalent, or 473 of 1.4. They're eye-catching.
That's a big drill hole, yeah.
And there's an interesting phenomenon in the market right now is that when we put those type of results out, and we don't get these in every hole, it kind of hits every 6th or 8th or 10th hole. So you can get a few batches of average stuff, and then you'll get another big hit on it. Yeah. We'll often get a bump off that, but it's not necessarily sustained in this market. So yeah. we know geologically we're adding a lot to it. But when we compile the best copper intercepts since January 2018, out of the top 20, we have 5 on this project. And 3 of those were not utilized for our resource calculations. So they're new material outside.
Yeah, and those kind of intercepts, those add a lot. It adds a lot of tonnage when you're delivering 600, 700, 800 meter intercepts. And you've got 4 rigs going now?
We have 4 drill rigs going right now. We'll continue to the end of the year with that. If the permit comes in as anticipated on that, then we will begin to divert rigs to drill to the north. Okay. And we'll continue to drill from the mine permits, but there's probably another half years of work to do there before we're largely drilled off on that side.
Okay, so basically you got another 15,000 meters something to drill. You've got a bunch of holes to report on, so in terms of unreported meterage, you probably got 15,000 meters or something like that, maybe more even. I'm not
of
sure.
Unreported, not that much. We're up through hole 34, and so we've got about another 5 holes that should come out, say, in the next month on this. Okay. And then we drill. It takes about 4 to 6 weeks to drill a hole with a rig on this. They tend to be lengthy holes. Right. Some of the worst ground conditions I've ever seen to drill in. Right. But usually when the driller's unhappy, the geologist's happy, because bad ground usually means you're mineralized and broken up. So
yeah, well, it's been messed around a lot, which is good geologically, but no fun for the driller. This isn't a market that's been really heavily rewarding companies that are, and keep in mind, this is not a copper deal. This is a copper gold project. They're pretty much even Steven, I think, in terms of value in the project. But this is, John's already got a very big resource. It's clearly going to be a lot bigger. As he mentioned, three of the top 5 holes aren't even in the resource yet, and the next resource, which probably won't be the last, won't be for a few more months. I mean, to me, this looks like a project that's it's extremely likely it's going to be a billion-ton plus resource. I think. I think you really want to be keeping an eye on this, and the time to get great base metal projects is when the market really isn't interested in them, because things tend to turn fast. When the copper market turns and companies get interested, companies like Regulus, where everyone knows the management, they know the project, they tend to start moving pretty fast when they turn. But the other thing I want to give Regulus a plug for, John and their VP Exploration, Kevin Heather, have done some fantastic videos. I mean, if you really want to understand how these deposits work, how they form, what they look like, John and Kevin have done these, probably about the best videos I've ever seen, honestly, in terms of a really good geologist that really knows his stuff, laying it all out in layman's terms and walking you through it so you can understand it. So I strongly recommend you go to the Regulus Resources site, take a look, find these videos. They're fairly easy to find on the site, and they're great watching if you want to learn something about this sector.
Great, appreciate that, Eric.
Regulus Resources, REG on the venture. Thank you.